Beloved brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The topic in question seeks to analyze the ethics and morals of a human being. And the idea that the Prophet comes forth and states, "I did not come to mankind except to perfect their morals and ethics." If we analyze a quote such as this from the Prophet himself, we seek to analyze how we can take that quote and apply it to our own lives. We see that if we go towards the workforce, seeking ethical behavior is one of the utmost importance. And the idea that when you go to apply for a job, one of the musts is giving a CV or a resume. And on that resume you have what? You have the idea of references. References are what? To see what kind of ethical being you are. What are your morals? What kind of a person, what character do you have? If you find another perspective, if you go to ask for a girl's hand, for example, the father, besides looking at the bank balance and the possessions, he looks at what kind of morals that person may bring forth and how he will take care of his daughter. So the idea of morals is an utmost importance. We seek to analyze this in a number of stages. Firstly, we'd like to look at the idea of moral. Is it clear-cut? As in, is there a defining line between someone that is moral and someone that is immoral? Or can you have characteristics of both? Then we'd like to shed a light on the idea of secular societies versus religion. Thirdly, we'd like to take from our imams, what does our imams have to say about this? And fourthly, I'd like to take one narration of one ethical thing that's happened in the aftermath of Karbala with Zayn al-Abidin. Inshallah, we'll start with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The question arises, can I have all ethical behavior and at least one wrong? As in, some people would come forth and state that I'm a good person, but I have this one wrong thing about me. As an example, I've come across people that would come forth and state that I pray, I fast, I do such and such actions, but on weekends sometimes I go clubbing. As an idea, the reply comes forth by stating with an analogy. If you take this analogy, you have a better understanding of how much this affects your life. Now imagine we have a glass of water. A glass full of water and it's crystal clear. You can see right through it. And imagine that's the soul of a person. Now take a bit of dirt, any type of dirt, and sprinkle it in that water. And the idea that that dirt is that sin that person commits, that's unethical behavior, and that's your soul. After you sprinkle that bit of dirt onto that water, does that water still clear or is it dirty water? It's dirty water, and the idea that that's how much of an impact that one particular sin or unethical behavior can have on your life as a whole. And it's going to be hard to do what? To take that dirt from that clear water to make it clear again. That's how much of an impact it can have on your life, brothers and sisters. On the second point, moving on, we'd like to look at secular societies versus religion. So some people will come forth and state that we learn our ethics from the society we live in. Whatever they uphold, we shall uphold. Whatever they reject, we shall reject. Or other people will say, no, we'll take from exactly what the religion says. Now, what are the pros and cons of looking at it from a secular society perspective? Society, one big problem about society is that it changes over time. And the idea that taking, as an idea, a swimsuit. 50 years ago, swimsuit was one piece and it would cover most of your body. Whereas during secular societies, the ethics changed until in the 21st century, you're barely covering anything at all. So the idea of ethics in secular societies changes during time. In another analogy, we find that 50 years ago, one of the things that was looked down upon more than anything else was the idea of homosexuality. Whereas now, in the 21st century, we have marches in the city. Giving what? Giving these people rights. And every Tom, Dick and Harry celebrates, what is it? Oh, it's Mardi Gras today. The idea being that secular societies changes over time. Whereas if we look at it from a religious point of view, we find in religion, it gives you a set rules and set regulations that you follow no matter what era you are living in. As in from the time of when the prophets first came until today, until the message, until the final Savior comes, these ethics will be bound. We'll be bound by these ethics and we won't go astray. We look at our Imams and how much of an ethical behavior we can take from them. Our Imams come forth and states, and this is very beautiful, he says, look at people. If you want to increase in ethical behavior, increase your morals, he says, look at the person that's older than you. How? He says, look at the person that's older than you, no matter of what his characteristics is, always look at him, saying he has beaten me to good deeds. Look at an older person in that manner. Whereas if you look at someone that's younger than you, how would you should look at them? He said, you should look at them by saying, I have beaten them towards sin. That's the idea of looking at the older person and looking at the younger person. And we should apply it to our own lives, because that's what the Imams tell us to do. We look at the role models because people, ladies and gentlemen, we say them something of the utmost importance. When debating, people come forward and say, why is your religion the best of religions? What makes your religion better than ours? And the reply is very simple. Amongst many, you tell them we have the best role models. As in, can you bring forth a role model better than Ali ibn Abi Talib? And Ali ibn Miqdad, the Sheikh was, I was talking to the Sheikh today, he says Miqdad, when he was captured, he was taken to the court of Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, and he told him, Miqdad, what will it take for you to let go of Ali ibn Abi Talib? Is there anything I can do to persuade you to let go of Ali ibn Abi Talib? He says, yes, of course. He says, what is it? What is it? He says, get me one person that's better than Ali ibn Abi Talib. Get me a person that's better than Ali, gladly I'll follow him. But the idea being is he's at the epitome of ethics. He's at the epitome of everything that's valuable and great. And that is one of our role models, brothers and sisters. Imam Ali alayhi salam, you look at his morals on a daily basis. We've gone through a couple in the late nights. We look at it on a regular basis, and not only that, we look at it in a war perspective as well. As in the Battle of Jamal, roughly about 36 years after Hijrah, 37 years after Hijrah, the idea was that Ali ibn Abi Talib went against Aisha, and the thing is, he said, there's one analogy that we will take that will finish the war, which was to bring her down from the camel. So he sent two people. He says, one to strike the camel down, and the other to break the fall as Aisha falls. Now look where the ethic is of Ali ibn Abi Talib. As Michael in narrations struck that camel, and Aisha fell. When she fell, that other person broke her fall. Aisha looked at him and he says, how dare you touch the wife of the Prophet? He looks at her and he says, Aisha, do you not recognize me? He says, no, who are you? He says, I'm Muhammad. I'm son of Abu Bakr, I'm your brother. Imagine that of a whole army in the hands of Ali ibn Abi Talib, he sends the only person that's mahram to her, so he can break her fall. That's the ethics, not only on a regular basis, but also in the most dire of situations. These ethics led a person from a Christian descent to write poetry about this Ali ibn Abi Talib. The Christian poet by the name of Bawr Salam, I'm sure many of you have heard of him, in which he comes forth and states beautiful lines in a representation of Ali ibn Abi Talib when he says, لا تقل شيعة هواة علي إن في كل منصف شيعية. He says what? He says, do not say that Ali ibn Abi Talib is only for the Shia, only for his followers. Rather say that Ali ibn Abi Talib is for every single person that is unbiased. It is a long narration, it's a long long piece of poetry, but at the end of it, what does he say? He says, أنا من يعشق البطولة والإلهام والحق والخلاق الرضية. Listen to this point. He says, فإذا لم يكن علي نبيا فقد كان خلقه نبويا. يا سماء اشهدي ويا أرض قري واخشعي إنني ذكرت عليا. What does the poet say about Imam Ali? He says, if Ali was not a prophet, then his mannerisms and ethics were that of a prophet, were prophetic. That's someone from outside of Islam taking from our role models, brothers and sisters, because Ali, we always try to put him in the cocoon which is Islam, whereas Ali is much greater. The Prophet is much greater. Our Imams are much greater than that, brothers and sisters. We look at it, people try to adopt that act even from our enemies. People such as Al-Ma'mun try to adopt the act of being ethical with the Imams, and the idea that he says, my pre-ancestors and the Umayyad Khalifas were all unethical towards Ahlul Bayt. He says, we have their Khilafah, but we're always unethical. Let's change it up a little bit. So he played a little game. He brought forth Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. He sits him down and he says, oh Imam, this throne of Khilafah is not mine. Please take it. Giving him his rightful throne back. Imam, what does he reply? He says, if it is not yours, O Ma'mun, then who are you to give it as you please? If it is not yours, then who are you to give it as you please? I remember there was an incident, Bahlul was trying to give Harun al-Rashid a little bit of common sense. He sees that no one sits on the throne, so Bahlul quickly ran up, sat on the throne of Harun al-Rashid. Harun al-Rashid saw him. It was only moments, they brought him down and Harun said, whip him. After they whipped him, he comes to me. He says, Bahlul, why are you still crying? He says, I'm crying for you, Harun. He says, why are you crying for me? He says, I have only sat on the throne that's not mine for moments, and I've got such punishment. Imagine you, you've taken it for all these years. What kind of punishment shall you face on the day of judgment? This was what people found. The akhlaq of Ahlul Bayt. We take from Imam Hassan alayhi salam as another example. Imam Hassan alayhi salam, the Shamis, the people from Sham and Damascus, every single person besides that place knew of the rights of Ahlul Bayt, knew who they were, their status. The people, I want to give you an idea that what kinds of people lived in Damascus at the time. When Ali ibn Abi Talib was killed, news reached Damascus, where Muawiyah resided. News reached them, they said Ali ibn Abi Talib died inside the mosque in prayer. The reply was what? The reply of those people was, Ali ibn Abi Talib went to the mosque as if he prayed? That's what kind of ideologies were back then. That's what government Muawiyah led and what Yazid led. Tried to instill into people that Ali ibn Abi Talib was ordinary. Whereas there was no one after the Prophet as magnanimous as Ali ibn Abi Talib. That's what they tried to install, brothers and sisters. When then someone from that kind of place came to Imam Hassan alayhi salam after the death of his father, he came cursing him and his father. He said such and such, words I can't mention from the pulpit, but he says your father is such and such and you are such and such, cursing him in the middle of the marketplace. The reply of the Imam is what? As in if someone came and attacked my father, I know I wouldn't control myself, I'd hit him back. But look at the ethics of Ahlul Bayt. Imam Hassan says, if I or my father are that which you say, then may Allah forgive us. But if you have wronged us with what you have said, if you are speaking untruthfully, then I forgive you. That led to what? That led to that person having love towards them, even though he's brought up to hate them. He thought to himself, these are not the same people that they told us about back then. Because of their ethics, the way they conducted themselves, it didn't matter if that person was on the wrong or was on the right. It's the way that they acted that brought towards the religion. And that's what we have to install into our lives, brothers and sisters. By firstly looking at how to improve our morals by looking at the people that surround us. It always goes back to your community, to your friends that you hang out with. It always goes back to them. And the analogy that tells you that you will always gain a little, even a little bit, will rub off